You are listening to Amplify Your Success Podcast, episode 121. And today I want to give you a little boost of high performance coaching. I'm going to share with you 4 strategies that will elicit greatness in yourself and the people that you are mentoring and guiding. So let's get started.
Welcome to the Amplify Your Success Podcast. Hey, are you a thought leader, creative entrepreneur, or change maker and want to magnify your impact? Boost influence while creating a financial abundance? Stay tuned for today's inspiring episode with your host, Melanie Benson.
Hello there, inspired entrepreneurs and business leaders. It's your host, Melanie Benson here. And today I'm going to take you behind the scenes to learn a little bit about the strategy of coaching. Coaching is a strategy that when used properly, you can actually take people's performance, people that you're mentoring, even your sales processes and team leadership. You can go from frustrating results and zero traction to high performance in no time. So I'm going to share with you how 4 techniques that I use in my own business and with clients and team members can actually transform the results you're getting in your business too. And speaking of high performance, I want to make sure that you have gotten your copy of the Revenue Rush Toolkit, the top 10 strategies you can use to create an instant cash flow rush into your bank account. It's totally free at yourrevenuerush.com. And here's why you'd want to have it in your toolkit. First of all, if you've got a big client that leaves unexpectedly, which happens to everybody who has any kind of service-based business, or if you do products and you have lots of big distributors that distribute your products for you, if you have one client leave, you've got a huge hole in your projected revenues. So having some of these strategies at your fingertips can help you replace that income quickly. Secondly, it's nice to know that anytime you want to bump things up, maybe you've got an investment you want to make, or you just want to see if you can increase your revenue by 4 to 10 times in the next 30 days, try 1, 2, maybe even 3 of these strategies, combine them together. I use these strategies in my own business with my clients, and I got to tell you, they are magical. So get your copy at yourrevenuerush.com. And now let's drop into the coaching strategies that can improve your performance by 10, 20, 100 times. All right, ready? Let's go. So today we're talking about the coaching strategies that can revolutionize the performance of you, your business, the clients you serve, your team members. Think of it like any place that you inspire and lead others. You can use these techniques. And I want to start by sharing just a little bit about why I believe coaching is a strategy that everyone wants to build up as a muscle, as a skill set that they can use. And that's because coaching is a way of eliciting people's greatness that's already inside of them and turning on the fire so they are motivated and inspired all on their own. I studied with a man named Thomas Leonard. If you've never heard of him, he's considered the grandfather of the coaching movement. Back 20 years ago, before coaching was an everyday thing and people thought, oh, coaching, it's an athletic coach. This was a man who was bringing a powerful skill set into the world of corporate and personal greatness, personal goals, personal performance, being able to elicit unheard of results from other people. It was actually right about the time that Tony Robbins was starting to get a lot of traction. And one of the things he said was inspiration is being motivated by a person or idea. Motivation is being inspired by an object. So when people are inspired, they don't need motivation. And what that means is that when you get somebody inspired, they don't need accountability. They don't need you to handhold them. They don't need you to have all kinds of tracking and rewards and things like that. They are self-fueled. They're self-propelled. And until you get someone inspired because they're aligned with something they want, you've got to push them. So think of it like coaching is a way to inspire people into massive action instead of feeling like you got to push them and force them and manage them and control them. very powerful parenting technique. I first uncovered how coaching was going to revolutionize my life when I worked in the corporate world, and I had a string of different managers that left me, let's just say, feeling very disconnected from the work I wanted to do in the world. And it all changed one day when my current manager, who's actually a friend of mine, we all had developed friendships over the years, and we all did social things together. And this was somebody I really liked, but we didn't really have a lot in common. And he invited me into his office for my 6-month, review, the time where we looked at goals and what did I want to do with my career there. And granted, this is, probably the top 100 Fortune 100 companies at the time. And I had no idea who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do there. I just didn't know what I was good at. And all of a sudden, the conversation we had that day made me inspired in a way I had never been inspired before. It made me want to plug in instead of, just doing whatever was on my plate. Like all of a sudden, I was fired up. And I asked him, I said, hold on, what are you doing right now? Because I was used to being made to feel bad about myself, to see all the mistakes I was making, to see that I, had all these things I had to improve on. And instead, that day I felt empowered, excited, and motivated to do things I'd never considered in that company before. And what he said changed the trajectory of my life for good. And I had no idea at the time how impactful it would be. But he said, I'm coaching you. And so as I unpacked that and I really started to look at what coaching meant and how it was transforming the way I felt, I realized that it was a skill set that I wanted to learn for myself. Because up until that point, I could get anybody to do anything to achieve extraordinary goals, but it was an enormous amount of energy, and there was a lot of pushing and forcing and managing, and it drained me. And I realized that coaching was a win-win. Using coaching techniques, I could inspire people to step into their greatness with very little management and very little oversight. And everybody wins because those people would actually achieve goals that were good for the company too. Now, as entrepreneurs and business leaders, can you see how if you were using more coaching technique, it would actually be good for your clients, be good for your teams, be good for the people that you're inspiring on a day-to-day basis. And of course, if you apply it to your children, you can see that that would play very nicely, right? Anyone who has a role that you want them to perform better in, you can use these techniques. You can, if you work in a company, you could apply this to people that do not report to you, but you rely on to get things done. It is a powerful strategy, but it's often misunderstood. And there's a lot of people that, especially in the expert world, in the mentoring world, who call themselves coaches, but they're not. They're actually mentors. And you can actually refer back to my podcast on do you need mentoring or coaching? Because there's very different skill sets. But just the bottom line is mentors tell you what to do. Coaches elicit your greatness. And sometimes people do both, which is what I do. But if you understand that difference, you will understand why coaching is so powerful. So I want to share with you 4 of the techniques that I find personally very helpful in all situations, especially in sales and in inspiring team members, and as I coach and mentor entrepreneurs to get out of their own way and achieve things they never knew were possible. I like to start with the coaching skill of curiosity. And here's why. This is, again, drawing back to the major distinction between being a mentor and being a coach. Mentors are not necessarily curious because in the back of their mind, they are in that role because they know the person on the other side basically wants to learn how they achieved a result. So they're going to tell you what they did. And oftentimes, mentors apply their, I already know how to do it. Just do it the way I do it. Logic. And I'm saying that usually because sometimes they do apply a little bit of coaching technique in there. But in my experience, mentoring basically helps somebody replicate exactly what that mentor did. When you're coaching and you lead with curiosity, several things happen. By asking questions, you begin to tap into this ideology that you're going to teach someone how to think and how to strategize and how to solve their own problems, which is very empowering, versus just telling them how to go get the fish out of the ocean and cook the fish, right? That is only going to take somebody so far in life. When you tell them what to do and how to do it, you are not empowering them. You are basically teaching them something, which is also very good, but you're not empowering them. And the single greatest reason people are not more self-sufficient in achieving great results in life is because they got taught how to do something, but not how to think about how to do that thing, not how to rise into becoming the person that could do it on their own. So here's what's so interesting about coaching. If you do coaching really well, you will oftentimes find that people get frustrated on the road to self-empowerment. You will find that they might be a little overwhelmed because they've got to use new muscles and start thinking very differently. Really great coaching engages someone to think in ways they've never thought before and upgrade their mindset so they become 100 times more resourceful and can pull any level of success off. So when you're curious, you don't go in assuming you know the answer. That's how a lot of people get taken down a path they don't really want to be on, but feel like they have to go on. What you do is you activate a higher level of awareness for you and the person on the other end, so they're consciously and intentionally connecting to what they really want. This is where true motivation comes from. Motivation that doesn't have to be managed comes because someone has self-selected and is excited about their goal because it came from inside of them and it has meaning and aligns with their values. So when you're curious, when you're in that coaching role and you're asking lots of questions, the questions are designed to get that person to come to their own decision about something. Okay, so this is a very powerful technique, is to be curious and ask really, really good questions instead of telling people what you want them to do at that moment or giving them advice. By asking questions, they oftentimes will come to the right answer on their own, but they're committed to it because they did come up with it on their own. So there's a very subtle level of influence in there. Because if you do a great job of asking the right questions, you actually can guide someone to really awesome action steps to take without telling them what to do. And let's face it, right? Who wants to be told what to do? Again, great parenting technique. The second thing is empower. And I already mentioned this, but I really believe that in order to get people to achieve things they've never done before, or they don't even believe in themselves, they have to feel empowered to get there. And what oftentimes people think they want is a path. They want you to lay out the steps for them. But again, if you lay out the steps for somebody, you don't necessarily teach them how to build the muscle of self-sufficiency. You teach them how to follow a set of steps. Now, there are times when we have to do that. We need speed. It would be something that they don't really want to learn how to do anyway. They're never going to do it again. But for many of us, if you connect the dots for someone without teaching them how to start thinking that way, it's over, right? Like they're constantly going to rely on you forever. What I like is the idea of empowering people, because when you empower them, they get inspiration that acts like fuel. It fires them up to achieve things they didn't know they could. 2, what are their priorities? So in order to get people inspired, so they're self-sufficient in that they have their own fire to achieve things they've never done before, you need 3 things in place. And what these 3 things are understanding their values, understanding their priorities, and understanding their needs. And what those 3 pieces do is they come together and act like drivers. So these become the drivers for decision making, the drivers behind action, and when they take action or don't take action, they become their fuel. And so when you coach people, again, whether it's your children, whether it's your team member or a client, or you're trying to inspire action in someone you have absolutely no authority over, if you can help them understand what they really, really want based on what they value, what their priorities are, and what their deep unconscious needs are, you will turn on a level of motivation and power that they didn't even know they had. So if you've ever coached with me, and I know lots of my clients listen to this podcast, you might recognize this as one of the cornerstones, one of the foundations that I start with. And when we do the Awaken Leadership Retreats, we always come back to, what do I need? What do I want? Like, what are my values? And what are my priorities in my life right now? Which may or may not always be the same thing. So if you want to inspire action in someone else and you're constantly having to light the fire in them and get them to do things, then I guarantee you one of those three things is out of whack. It's not on track for them, or they're operating out of their needs without being aligned in their priorities and values. And what that means is needs tend to be kind of that shadow energy of, I need celebrity, or my ego needs to be fed, or some people have this deep need for approval, right? So it tends to be the place where we're a little wounded, and yet it shows up as a pattern in our life over and over and over again. For a lot of people in the entrepreneurial space, this is a need for safety, which is really interesting because it's an oxymoron to entrepreneurship. So getting those three things in alignment is how you activate coaching. So one of the things we do in my leadership program is we do go through a piece of the year where we build the coaching muscle. How do we coach ourselves? How do we coach others? And this is a very powerful piece of it, is understanding this in ourselves. We then start to understand how to ask the right questions that will elicit this in the people we are inspiring into action. You see how it all fits together. This next one, and by the way, I could probably do like a whole 6-month course on this. It would be very powerful. Coaching is one of my great loves. So I'm trying to keep this short today, but give you some really powerful takeaways. So let me get into coaching skill number 3. And that's what I like to consider challenge, stretch, grow. So when people are in fear, they tend to cling to their comfort zone. But in their comfort zone, they can't achieve things they've never done before. They can only do what they already know. So when we challenge, stretch, and grow someone, we invite them to set a goal that scares them. This is the whole philosophy behind the Own Your Bold training that I do, is if you set a goal that's bigger than anything you've done before, you have to grow to become the person who's capable of it. When we grow and we set these bigger goals, this is where we create new neurons. We basically evolve what's called the neuroplasticity of our brains, meaning we teach our brain how to grow into the level of thinking and capability and resourcefulness that it needs to pull that off. So you can see that one of the coach's jobs is to constantly challenge the person who they're coaching to stretch into something they've never done before. Carol Dweck wrote a book called Growth Mindset, and it's a very, very great resource around this. It's one of the best books on mindset I've ever written. Now it's written very academically. And so I'm hoping at some point I can have her on the podcast, because I'd love to see her more recent research on this. But the idea is we're either in one of two mindsets, growth mindset or fixed mindset. In a fixed mindset, we are basically fixed on, I can only do this a certain way, or I don't know how to do it, so I'm not going to go for it. And there's a lot of frustration and fear about trying anything new. And you tend to limit what you believe you can achieve, because if you don't know how to do it already, you will convince yourself it's not possible. In the growth mindset, the reward is on effort rather than result. And so growth mindset is really the idea behind, like, how do you continually grow and evolve who you are and what you can accomplish? So I highly recommend that book if you haven't read it yet. The idea is, if you want to be capable of doing things that are outrageously big and continue to grow and evolve as a human being, which I highly recommend, because if we're not growing, guess what we're doing? We're stagnant, and there's not a lot of good that happens in stagnation. You want to constantly strive to a next level goal. Now, it doesn't mean you don't ever just celebrate your wins, because there's something really important about celebrating wins. It means that you're constantly stretching yourself into that next level while celebrating and acknowledging what you have done. So it's teaching the mind to recognize that both of those energies can happen simultaneously and serve you by basically rewarding effort of what you've accomplished while stretching and growing into new levels of capability. It's a very, really powerful thing to learn is, oh, I can actually celebrate what I've done and be grateful and really honor that. And I can keep stretching and growing. It's how we overcome high achiever burnout. All right, here's the last one. I've got hundreds of these, so picking my top 4, I might have to do another version of this down the road and do a part 2, is what I call reframing. So in the coaching experience, there will be times when people get stuck on what hasn't happened. They can be very devastated by what they feel is failed attempts and failures, by disappointments and not being where they think they want to be. And so a very powerful coaching skill can be reframing. So you can use reframing in sales, you can use reframing in, like helping people achieve goals. You can use reframing just simply in terms of helping someone rise out of a very negative state. Reframing is the idea that the thought someone's having right now is limiting them. So let's take this into the sales framework for a minute. One of the biggest things that happens in the sales conversation, if you're doing it with the coaching twist, is when somebody tells you what they want, you reframe it back to them in a way that, if they're starting to live in their limitations and say, I can't afford it, or I don't know how to do that, or I don't know if that'll work for me, I don't think I have time, right? All the objections that come up, you reframe it into what do you want, and how saying yes, if it is a good fit for them, how saying yes will actually get them to that goal. So that's one way you might use reframing. Another way you use reframing is when people get stuck in limited thinking or as if they've made a mistake, is how could you frame it in a more positive, empowering way? The reason why I think this is important coaching skills to adapt is reframe. When you framed something in a negative spin and that person gets locked into it, they're stuck. They're never going to move from that place. This can have to do with behaviors, decisions, thought patterns, belief systems, right? Like the whole gamut. Guess what the biggest single thing I do is? I reframe people's thought patterns, decision making, and behaviors all day long. The reason why my clients get great results is I teach them how to frame their thoughts in the paradigm that matches the goals they want. And this is another coaching skill that we can use in any area of our life. When we teach people how to think in a way that matches the goals and the outcomes they want, they become unstoppable. When people stay stuck in levels of thinking that keep them stuck, they will stay stuck forever. And they're not high performers there. So if you run a team and you find that someone gets stuck in poor behaviors, how could you frame a behavior that matches the outcomes that you know they want and they know they want? So you said you wanted to make more money. Well, the thinking you're in right now is keeping you stuck where you are. So what if you were more excited about this outcome? Would that help you achieve your financial goals, right? So not maybe the greatest example, but you get the picture here. How can we connect people's behaviors and the steps that they may not believe they want to take to outcomes they really, really want? So on a personal note, a really funny story about my niece. I love her to death. I have a very special bond with her. I was in the delivery room when she was born, and she's been, big part of my life all the way through. We were very bonded. And so, we have some very interesting discussions. She's now almost 21. And so watching her evolve into a very high quality thinker, I believe she has been developed in her coaching abilities. And so one day, she loves the idea of being a tattoo artist, and she started to get some tattoos. And so for me, the idea of someone stabbing my arm and creating massive pain is like the worst idea on the planet. So I asked her, so doesn't it, kind of overwhelm you? I know you don't like pain. She doesn't even like to hike or exercise or anything. She's like, I don't focus on the pain of the tattoo when it's being done. I focus on what I know it's going to look like at the end, and it makes me happy. Those are very wise words from a young person about how we can reframe pain and what we view something that we don't want to do and get people to get to the outcome is we connect their decision making and their habits to outcomes rather than the process to get there. So I'll leave you with that. I'm curious what you think about this. I want to create a conversation with you in the Amplify Your Success community, which is completely free. Come in as my guest. We're doing some really cool things in there. We've been doing virtual networkings once a month. I'm going to start doing some more live trainings in the group. And I'm thinking about doing a live training on the power of coaching questions to get massive results. So let me know if you like that idea, and if you would want that, you can share it in the Facebook group and just throw a little comment in there and let us know, or you can also throw it on the show notes at amplifyyoursuccesspodcast.com. You can just search for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in today. I've got some more really exciting episodes lined up for you. This is Melanie Benson, your host. Thanks so much for listening in today. If you want to catch up on any of the show notes and circle back on any of the resources we shared in today's show, head on over to the show page at amplifyyoursuccesspodcast.com. And remember, you amplify your results faster when you're in a community of other people who are moving and shaking. Join us at amplifyyoursuccesscommunity.com. One last thing. When you've gained insight from today's episode, help us share that and inspire other people by heading over to iTunes, subscribing, and give it a review. iTunes absolutely loves seeing these reviews pop up, and it actually helps boost my show's visibility. So I would be super grateful for your reviews. And as always, I love seeing your shares of these episodes on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Come find me over there. Tag me in your shares. I'll give you some social media love right back. So see you next week for another inspiring episode of Amplify Your Success Podcast.